Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachare Yamuna Tiravanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Balava Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachare Yamuna Tiravanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Janishpad Paramahansa Parivajacharya Statusismad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Devotees, we are coming up to Radhastami. So I'm assuming, well, I don't even know actually, but I'm assuming we should give a class which is connected with Radhastami, some sort of build up to Radhastami. So we will do that. We will read a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you want to read something from Srila Prabhupada's books about Srimati Radharani, then the place to look is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, because it's, well, that's where the most information is, and it's really amazing what is there. Yes, it's really, really amazing. So we'll read a few verses from here and there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Where am I? Let's see. Oops. Yes. Oh, what? Oh, I see. Okay, excuse me. All right, here we go. So, to begin with, we will read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 4, verse 56. Radha Krishna Eka Atma Dui Deha Dari Anyonye Vilase Rasa Asvadana Kari. Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they have assumed two bodies. Thus, they enjoy each other, tasting the mellows of love. So it is a deep subject. It is the deepest subject. That's a fact. Srimati Radharani and her relationship with Lord Krishna, it is really an extremely deep subject, but it's a wonderful subject. It's a very nice subject. And there's a verse, pardon me, I'm sort of skipping around a little bit. There's a definitive verse in Adi Leela chapter 1, which I'll read first of all, to just elaborate on what we just read, the first verse we read. So this is now Adi Leela chapter 1 verse 5. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladni Shaktir Azmad Ekat Manav Api Bhuvi Pura Deha Bedam Gato To Chaitanya Kyam Prakatam Aduna Tadwayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhava Duty Suvalitam No Me Krishna Swarupam. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, previously they separated themselves. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. Right. So, one time Srila Prabhupada was giving a class somewhere in America, and two devotees in a temple, and Srila Prabhupada asked a question of the devotees, and it seemed like a kind of unusual question, even a strange question to ask devotees who have been practicing Krishna consciousness, chanting 16 rounds a day for a few years. Srila Prabhupada asked, who is God? What do you think? So the devotees went, Krishna! Of course. And Srila Prabhupada said, no. And the devotees thought, what happened now? Has someone taken over, pushed him out, or what? What is this? And Srila Prabhupada said, no, Radha Krishna is God. Radha Krishna. And he quoted this verse we just read right now, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritya Chladni Shaktir Asmad Ekat Manav Api Bhavi Pura Deha Bedam Gatau Tau. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves. And they're like that eternally. You cannot say that Radha and Krishna are simply one and that's it. Or at some point they were actually one and then they separated themselves and then there was Radha and Krishna. They're eternally Radha and Krishna. Yes, but at the same time, it's a classic case, one of the really classic cases of achintya bhed abhed tattva, oneness and difference, which is the basic foundational conception in our philosophy, the oneness and difference between Krishna and everything and everyone. Not just Srimati Radharani, but us too, you and me and Krishna. We are one, but we are different simultaneously. And it's achintya, it's inconceivable, or at least somewhat inconceivable, but there you have it. There's an interesting little story of, who was it? Achyutananda Swami, who was the landlord of a property we were using in Calcutta. I think the actual where our temple is. Do you know about that? It's the same place? Yeah, Albert Road. So for some time we were tenants, then we bought it. So anyway, this gentleman, Mr. Roy, was the landlord, and he was something, he was a nice Hindu gentleman, and as is the case with many pleasant Hindu gentlemen, particularly in India itself, he had many ideas about many things, including about Lord Chaitanya and including about Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna. So this one of our devotees, Achyutananda Swami, got into some sort of discussion with him, and this Mr. Roy said, expounding, propounding concepts of reality. He said, actually, Lord Chaitanya is the supreme. Lord Chaitanya is the original, and Radha and Krishna have come from Lord Chaitanya. Haribol. He's a nice Hindu gentleman, and they have so many versions of such ideas. And Lord Chaitanya is more beautiful, more attractive, greater than Radha and Krishna. And we do not agree with him, by the way, if anyone's feeling confused. And he gave an interesting example. It's a material example, but according to his perception or perspective, it has some application. The problem with material examples to illustrate transcendental points is that in some, however many cases, some number of cases, there's some degree of applicability and the example can be used to some extent, but none of those examples, generally none of them, are like totally appropriate and just complete. So the example he gave, which to some people must sound quite good, is that rasgulla is better than milk and sugar. That's interesting. So Achyutananda Swami became a little confused, so he came to Srila Prabhupada, who was there, and he put it to Srila Prabhupada, who's the original? And Srila Prabhupada said that Radha and Krishna come first. And he took that same example of the rasgulla, which, if you think about it, the gentleman, anyway, it's not such a great example, really, because you can't just have a rasgulla to start off with. Rasgulla is a product, a combination. So Prabhupada said, the same example, first the milk and sugar exist separately, and then they combine together to form the rasgulla. Yeah. And Achyutananda said, well, who is greater then? He's meaning Lord Chaitanya or Radha and Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada, very transcendental, Srila Prabhupada paused momentarily, closed his eyes, and went into a deep, he was always in a deep state of consciousness, but particularly deep state of consciousness. And he didn't say, well, Radha and Krishna are greater, or Lord Chaitanya, nothing like that. Srila Prabhupada said, Srimati Radharani is the greatest. And he pointed to a picture on the wall. And we can point to a picture on the ceiling, actually. It's not exactly the same, but the principle is exactly the same. And it shows, in that case, the picture shows Srimati Radharani sitting on a raised platform and Lord Krishna kneeling at her feet, trying to please her or pacify her, but appealing to her in a humble type of way, which is here too. Lord Krishna is serving Srimati Radharani. He is preparing a garland for her. And she happens to come along in the middle of Krishna preparing to make an offering to her, to render some service to her. And Krishna said, Srila Prabhupada said that actually the devotees are the greatest, and therefore Krishna becomes the servant of the devotees. And of course, amongst the devotees, Srimati Radharani is the greatest. We read that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, first canto, first chapter, verse 5. Very nice. And I mentioned, if you really want to, in terms of Srila Prabhupada's books, learn about Srimati Radharani, you should go to Chaitanya Charitamrita chapter 4, because there you find the most concentrated information about Srimati Radharani. So, as we read, well, anyway, let's read a few more verses from the 4th chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. That verse we just read, it says, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladni Shaktir Asmad. Basically, that Srimati Radharani is the pleasure potency, Hladni Shakti, of Lord Krishna. In other words, you can say this point of the oneness, is there. The first verse we read, Radha Krishna Eka Atma, Dui Deha Dari, Anyonye Vilase Rasa, Asvadana Kari, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they've assumed two bodies. So he goes on, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami goes on to elaborate further. This is now chapter 4, Adi Leela, verse 59. Radhika Hayena Krishnaya Pranaya Vikara Swarupa Shakti Hladini Nama Yanhara. Srimati Radhika is the transformation of Krishna's love. She is his internal energy called Hladini. And the next verse 60, Hladini Karaya Krishna Anandasvadana Hladinira Dwara Kare Bhaktira Poshana. That Hladini energy gives Krishna pleasure and nourishes his devotees. So just to start off with, we should consider these points. That the Hladini Shakti, well, we talk of Krishna as being Satchitananda Vigraha. Satchitananda Vigraha. He has a form made of eternity, knowledge or consciousness, and bliss. That's the name of the states. That's the name of the states that make up the state of Krishna. But each one of those states manifests in the form or as a particular energy. Sat, Chit, Ananda. The Sat, the eternity feature of Krishna, is situated on his, or is a manifestation. His eternity is a manifestation of his Sandhini potency. His Sandhini potency is the potency. Just consider these points. The potency of eternity, the potency of knowledge, consciousness is samvit, chit, samvit. Yeah. And the potency, the actual Shakti of his pleasure, his bliss, is the Hladini potency. So Hladini potency then is oftentimes, or even generally, referred to as his pleasure potency, and here indeed, that Hladini energy gives Krishna pleasure. So Srimati Radharani is a personification, a personal form of Krishna's pleasure potency. It's said here, you can also call it his love, because Krishna, it's his love potency, his pleasure potency. But when we talk of Krishna's pleasure, then we talk about love. That's what we talk about. We don't talk about something else. Krishna's pleasure means love. Krishna is not into just sense gratification as such. Of course, when he, for example, eats something prepared by a devotee, he gets pleasure. But he gets pleasure from the presence of love within that preparation. And we assume it's very tasty also, but that's not. I mean, to whatever degree the tastiness is a manifestation of the love therein, to that degree, he gets pleasure. So, in other words, Krishna's pleasure potency, it's very nice. This verse 59, Srimati Radhika is the transformation of Krishna's love. Sometimes we talk about, just in terms of his pleasure potency, that Krishna has the capacity to enjoy, sort of built into him. He's got the capacity to enjoy, and Radharani means he's now placed that capacity to enjoy separate from himself in the form of another person, Srimati Radharani. So you can say like that. Of course, don't think, we mustn't think that now that he's put his pleasure potency outside himself in the form of Radharani, now he can't enjoy. He's lost his capacity to enjoy, and now he's only Sat-Chit, no Ananda. The Ananda's out there. Well, the Ananda is out there, but the Ananda's still there too. Yeah, so, it's not a simple subject matter. But this puts it very nicely. Srimati Radhika is the transformation of Krishna's love. And just to refer to the example we gave of food which is offered to the Lord, and that the pleasure that the Lord gets from it is specifically in terms of the love that went into it. I think we're all familiar with the story from Mahabharata of Lord Krishna going to Hastinapur not too long before the Battle of Kurukshetra, and he wanted to try to negotiate peace. Anyway, what happened was he's moving around in the city, and he met Duryodhana, who is his father Dhritarashtra was officially the king, but Duryodhana is basically managing. Effectively, he's ruling. So they met each other in the streets, and Duryodhana, trying to be polite, invited Krishna for lunch. We'll have a royal feast for you. They probably had a royal feast every day anyway. So we'll have a royal feast, please come. But Duryodhana, of course, is not a devotee. In fact, he's really anti-devotee, actually. Srila Prabhupada says that he is an expansion of the personality Kali, the personality of Kali Yuga. Not Kali, but Kali, that person, who's dominating Kali Yuga and the degradation of Kali Yuga. So anyway, Krishna was invited. He continued moving around, and he met his great devotee, Vidura, who also invited him for lunch. So he accepted the invitation of Vidura, and he went there. But Vidura and his wife were very poor. They didn't really have any nice food, like, a nicely cooked meal. All they had was some bananas. But they served Krishna bananas. And Krishna was so happy to be with his devotees, he happily accepted the bananas. That this is just great. But what none of them really understood was that the wife was peeling the bananas, but she was in her ecstasy that Krishna, our Lord, is here with us. And we're getting the chance to offer something to him. She was throwing away the fruit and handing the skin to her husband Vidura, who was then handing it to Krishna. And Krishna was in such ecstasy, I'm with my devotees, that he didn't notice that these are the banana skins and not the fruit. And he was eating the banana skins and relishing it. And he was saying, these are the best bananas I've ever eaten. And it was the love he was tasting. Because, you can give it a try today and see what banana skins taste like. I've never tried one because it's not usually done. And I think there's a good reason for that. But it was the love. He was tasting the love. So it's a nice little story, famous little story, which illustrates the point, the principle. Srimati Radharani, you can say, and it's not incorrect, and Prabhupada says also on numerous occasions, she is Krishna's pleasure potency, his capacity to enjoy. But he enjoys love. And when there's no love, he doesn't enjoy. So we read about Vamsidas Babaji, who was an avaduta, just kind of, I don't know what you would say, but just sort of lost in love for the Lord, and really not very externally conscious at all. And sometimes he would offer to his deities raw brinjal, which is another thing I haven't eaten. But I know, I've heard of. Anyway, doesn't sound very nice. But I'm sure they accepted because he had so much love. Whereas something even you could say luxurious cooking, if it's by a materialist, then he won't touch it to start off with, because he knows there's no love. But even if he does, somehow or other, it's not that he's going to enjoy it, because what he enjoys is the taste of the love. So that hladini potency gives Krishna pleasure and nourishes his devotees. That's another side of it. The hladini potency, or Srimati Radharani, directly, indirectly, it's essentially the same thing, nourishes the devotees, because the devotees render service to Krishna, and in this way the Krishna's pleasure is aroused, because the devotees have affection for Krishna. The devotees have some love. Even the devotees are not great devotees, very advanced, completely on the platform of Shuddha Sattva and Shuddha Nam, and just totally pure devotional service in the sort of highest sense of the term. Even beginning devotees, but devotees who are trying, because Bhakti Devi, Srila Prabhupada also makes the point that Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Srimati Radharani. She's not just another person, she's an expansion of Radharani. Bhakti Devi, the presiding deity of devotional service. And Radharani is the presiding deity of devotional service. So when she sees some devotees trying to do some service for her beloved Krishna, she gives some of her mercy. And what's her mercy? Hladini Shakti. That's what she is. She gives some of that Hladini Shakti, some of that love, potency. And so the devotees, even they're not advanced, but they do something with at least some degree of desire to please the Lord. That means they're being nourished in their devotional service by the Hladini Shakti. It's not just, well, if there's no Hladini Shakti, what is it? Well, of course, if someone becomes deviated, partially, they may think when they're offering Krishna some food, some bhoga, they may look at the offering and think, wow, when it's offered, I'm going to take this preparation for me. Which is not exactly, love. It's a mixed devotional service. But at least when devotees really try to do some service for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, for the pleasure of Shri Radhanath, some mercy comes and nourishes them and gives them inspiration to do more service, because there's some nectar there, and that nectar is Hladini Shakti. It's the mercy of Srimati Radharani. Some sharing is going on. So Srimati Radharani is the embodiment, the manifestation, the form of, she is in person, the actual Hladini Shakti. And therefore, she is a very important, most important personality in the life of Krishna. Let me read a few more verses here from chapter 4 of the Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'll just read some of the translations. So the essence of, this is verse 68, the essence of the Hladny potency is love of God. The essence of love of God is emotion, bhava. And the ultimate development of emotion is mahabhava. Verse 69, Sri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of mahabhava. She is the repository of all good qualities and the crest jewel of all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. Yes. And verse 70. Well, I'll actually go on to verse 71. Her mind, senses, and body are steeped in love for Krishna. She is Krishna's own energy, and she helps him in his pastimes. You know, that's an interesting way to put it. Her mind, senses, and body, just her. These things are steeped in love for Krishna. Steeped essentially means completely saturated. Just like, to give a material example, pretty material. If you have a sponge and you submerge it in water and pull it out and squeeze it, then, that is being steeped. It's steeped in the water. You squeeze it and out comes water. So Srimati Radharani, when Krishna squeezes her as he does, then, yes, she's just saturated. Every atom of her is just filled with love. Yeah. Hladny potency. And in this way, she gives Krishna pleasure. Okay, now let's carry on. Verse 72. It's actually Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, verse 37. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure, and who embodies the ecstatic potency Hladny. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form, and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. Permeated, yeah, that's steeped, permeated, saturated. This is, I think you're familiar with these terms. Yeah, just full, completely full, with ever blissful spiritual rasa. So now, verse 73, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, now please listen to how Lord Krishna's consorts help him taste rasa and how they help in his pastimes. Because we read that the essence of the Hladny potency is love of God, prema. The essence of love of God is emotion, bhava. And the ultimate development of emotion or bhava is mahabhava. So, yeah, rasa, there are different bhavas. There are different bhavas or types of ecstasies. You can read Nectar of Devotion if you'd like to understand that in more detail. Particularly, from chapter 20 to about 35. But there are different types of ecstasies, and they are very amazing. But when the ecstasies mix, the mixture is called rasa. So rasa and prema, love, they are just extremely intimately connected. As we read, Hladni Shakti, the essence is prema, the essence of prema is bhava, the different emotional states. And, well, when all the bhavas come together at one time in one person, that's called mahabhava. But when the bhavas, the different ecstasies, which are the different elements making up the picture of prema, when they mix, at least say two of them mix, the mixing is called rasa. The mixing of bhavas is called rasa. So here's an interesting description. And as Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, now please listen. Okay, you'll listen, right? You'll listen, yeah. Now please listen. The beloved consorts of Lord Krishna are of three kinds. The goddesses of fortune, the Lakshmis. Lakshmi Gana is the Sanskrit term. Lakshmi Gana, the goddesses, plural, the goddesses of fortune, the queens of Dwaraka, and the milkmaids of Vraja, the gopis, cowherd girls of Vrindavan. So three types of conjugal consorts: goddesses of fortune, Lakshmi and her expansions, the queens, Rukmini, Satyabhama, and so on in Dwaraka, and the gopis, Radharani, Lalita Vishaka, and all the gopis in Vraja. So yes, goddesses of fortune, queens, milkmaids of Vraja, who are the foremost of all? Now please listen. These consorts all proceed from Radhika. They all come from Radharani. Yes, all of them. Be it the Lakshmis, the queens, or all the different gopis, so many gopis are there. They all proceed from Srimati Radharani. Just as the fountainhead, Lord Krishna, is the cause of all incarnations, so Sri Radha is the cause of all these consorts, all the Lakshmis, all the queens, and all the gopis. And now it gets a little complicated. The goddesses of fortune are partial manifestations of Radharani. Get that? Partial. And the queens are reflections. Yeah, there's a difference. Partial manifestations of her person and reflections of her image. The goddesses of fortune are her plenary portions, and they display the forms of Vaibhava Vilas. Now that could get us into a complicated type of situation. But anyway, they're forms of Srimati Radharani. The queens are of the nature of her Vaibhava Prakash. The Vrajadevis have diverse bodily features. They are her expansions and are the instruments for expanding rasa. Yes. Okay. So, let's continue. This is now verse 80. Without many consorts, there's not such exaltation in rasa. Therefore, there are many manifestations of Srimati Radharani to assist in the Lord's pastimes. In other words, many manifestations of Radharani's love for Krishna, and they all assist in the Lord's pastimes by so many different moods and feelings and emotions and exchanges of these things in different ways that that all assists in the Lord's pastimes. Among them are various groups of consorts in Vraja who have varieties of sentiments and mellows. They help Lord Krishna taste all the sweetness of the rasa dance and other pastimes. And verse 82, Govinda Nandini Radha, Govinda Mohini, Govinda Sarvasva Sarva Kama Shiromani, Kanta, Sarva Kanta Shiromani. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda, and she is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and end-all of Govinda, and the crest jewel of all his consorts. And we'll conclude with verse 83. Devi Krishna Mai Prokta, Radhika Paradevata, Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarva, Kanti Sammohini Para. The transcendental goddess, Srimati Radharani, is the direct counterpart of Lord Shri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval, internal potency of the Lord. Well, that's an interesting statement. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord. Well, she is the Hladini potency, which is one of the three which make up actually the internal potency, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sandini, Samvit, and Hladini potencies all together make up the internal potency. So why is it said here that she is the primeval internal potency of the Lord? Well, the reason for that is that the Sandini, the eternity, existence potency, the potency of existence, which is eternal. So that potency and the potency of consciousness, of knowledge, what's it there for? It's all there for Krishna's pastimes. That's what Krishna's there for. Even this material world exists to facilitate Krishna's pastimes by reforming the conditioned souls. That's what it's there for. It's not just a prison house. It's not just a place for the conditioned souls to enjoy, although they may think it is, but it's actually to reform the conditioned souls so they'll come back into Krishna's pastimes and have loving exchanges. So therefore, these potencies, they're all there to facilitate the chladni potency. They're all there to facilitate the loving exchanges, which are what gives Krishna happiness. So in that sense, it's slightly subtle perspective, but in that sense we can understand that it's not an overstatement to say she is the primeval internal potency of the Lord, because the existence is there. Eternality is there for Krishna to enjoy his loving pastimes in, and consciousness, knowledge is there for Krishna and the devotees to have pastimes with Krishna. And it's all there serving the chladni potency, Krishna's love, his propensity to love, his desire to exchange loving pastimes, the relish that he gets from that. So like this, Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. And even though there are other parts of the internal potency, they're all basically facilitating Srimati Radharani and her assistants in the loving pastimes. Hare Krishna. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Any comment or question?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, thank you for that nice class. Could you help me understand this word rasa, please? I thought it was taste, I thought it was mellow, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand exactly what it means.
It means things come to the level of rasa when the ecstasies mix. That mixing is called rasa of the bhavas, of the different tastes. When the different tastes mix, that the product is rasa. That's explained in Nectar of Devotion quite clearly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mother Ranga Devi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just wondering about the Lakshmis. Are the expansions of Lakshmi Devi?
There are many Lakshmis. They're expansions of Mahalakshmi, who's the original Lakshmi. But she is an expansion of Srimati Radharani. So they're expansions of Radharani.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay?
I was just wondering what is their duty? I know they are the goddesses of fortune, but is that all they do?
No, that's just kind of, not exact, maybe incidental. They're wives of Narayan. That's what they mainly do. They're the consorts of Narayan, who's expanded from Krishna. So what they really do, they please their husband. That's what they do. But they also do some goddess of fortune things for people in this world.
Okay.
They're not particularly keen on doing it. Therefore, they're also called, Lakshmi is called Chanchala, flickering. She gives some person who worships her something, some fortune, but then she moves away. And so that person finds that suddenly, oh, I've stopped getting mercy from Lakshmi. unless they become devotees of Narayan. And because she is always with Narayan, as well you must know, she's the classic wife, the perfect wife. Yeah. So if someone wants, like, consistently to get the mercy of Lakshmi, they must become devotees of a husband or of both of them. Then consistently they can get some, whatever type of help she wants to give. But otherwise, if they just approach her directly, she's chanchala. Because it's her duty as a sort of, you could see Radharani getting cursed. You know that one, I'm sure. Yes, it's okay. Just Hare Krishna. It's not really going to happen because they are just inseparable. Yeah. You can't have Radha, Krishna without Radha. One person, devotee, not ISKCON devotee, but he criticized Prabhupada because in Delhi, our deities are Radha Parthasarathi. And he said, what is this Radha Parthasarathi? Parthasarathi is Krishna on the battlefield with Arjuna. Radharani's not there. And Prabhupada heard about that, and he didn't appreciate it. Yeah, and he said, Radharani's always with Krishna. Yeah. There may be different pastimes with different enhancements and different things, but don't think that, that they're always totally absolute in all places, under all circumstances. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for that wonderful discussion. Just a point, I was remembering a short exchange that between Krishna Kshetra Prabhu, at that time he was the minister of deity worship, and it was in Raval, and he was asking His Holiness Radhanath Swami about why is it that we find in the main temples of the Goswamis and the previous acharyas, it's just Govindaji or Madan Mohan, but there's no like Radharani installed. It's just Krishna deity, like that. And Maharaj explained that in the mood of the acharyas and the Goswamis, Krishna is never separated from Radharani. She is always there in his heart. So when they're establishing the deity, automatically it's understood that Radharani is there. She is there. Even in Kurukshetra, she is in Krishna's heart. So there is no misunderstanding on the part of Prabhupada or the previous acharyas, because Radharani is never ever separated in that sense, yeah.
Right. It's just we don't have the eyes to see it, that's all. At least with Radha Raman, if we talk about those main deities, at least with Radha Raman, they have some clothes and things on one side. But we should never think she's not there. She's definitely there. Yeah. Thank you.
Maharaj, I just had one other comment and maybe a further clarification from you. Is that earlier you mentioned that nice pastime about Duryodhana and Vidura's wife and Krishna. And sometimes we may get the misunderstanding at our level that it doesn't matter, I could be haphazard about my service, but as long as I have love, that's all that matters. Krishna is going to accept it, because just see, we can then maybe put banana peels on the Lord's plate and put it up there, because that's my mood, that's my love. But for our perspective, then that's not love. That's just a concoction.
Negligence. Yeah, if we have some love or something, we will do our best to do it really nicely. That's our love. And not be lazy or slapdash or something like that. Yeah, I've heard people say like that we don't need to worry about how we do things, but just sort of the emotion or whatever in it. But that if there's emotion, it'll manifest in great concern and interest. These things are emotions. To do it as nicely as possible for the Lord's pleasure. Yeah. And we definitely shouldn't think that we have so much love that if we do it badly, that it's just going to be fine with Krishna. It's not going to be fine with the spiritual master, with Prabhupada. It's not going to be fine if they see that here's a, not nicely put together offering of whatever sort. Yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.